Hello, welcome everyone at this first product update meeting for Unified Input Management, where today I'll be covering what's new in ZENworks 2020 Update 3. With me, I've got Bob Reynolds. I will be hosting most of these product updates together with Bob. In this case, I'll be running today's webinar, and Bob will be focusing on the one that we've got next month. On the call, we also have some of the product managers. Paul Padron is already online. Vikram and Darren might join as well. They're not online yet. And hopefully together we will be able to give you an informative hour with what is new in Update 3. As mentioned in the registration page, this is a monthly thing, so you'll get reminders every month on the update webinar that's coming up, and we'll get back to that at the end of the month, at the end of the session as well. We do have other update webinars as well. So for Filer, Groupwise, and OES, we had these webinars for quite some time already. And we now start with the UEM one for ZENworks and Hybrid Workspace and Connected. So we've got the webinars. If you want, you can obviously subscribe to Filer, Groupwise, and OES as well. Another thing that we have coming up is the TTP conference that is going to be held in Weiden in Germany. I just want to make some advertisement on that. On the TTP webinar, that's actually running from the 27th of February till the 3rd of March. In the weekend before that, we got hands-on workshops on things like Groupwise, OES, but also on ZENworks. We've got a 2-day workshop specifically targeted on ZENworks Update 3. So if you're interested and want to join that, it might be interesting to have a look at. In the past, the TTP was always for education customers only, but it's now opened up to other customers as well. So if you're interested, maybe that's an interesting thing to have a look at. But for today, I will just go on with what is new in ZENworks 2020 Update 3. Now, ZENworks 2020 Update 3 released about 2 months ago, and it has a lot of new things in the package. There's a couple of main topics that we have. Main topic number 1 is the extended use of the on-demand content. So that's on-demand content is something that we introduced with Update 2. I'll get into that a little bit later. But that's now, we're now able to use that for other content types as well. Second on the major update list is the next generation patch management. So with Update 3, we are shipping a, basically rewritten patch management product. That will have a lot of additional functionality for patch, and it's just more efficient in the way that we use that. And I'll give a slight highlight on that during this session. In the next one that we have in a month time from now, we will have the deep dive with Darren and Bob. A third area of what is highlighted on this slide is the enhanced security. So we've added multi-factor authentication, and we did some changes to make the separation of administration more easy in environments where you're exposing the primary server to the internet. So we'll be having a look at that as well. Now, obviously, that's not the only thing. We've added lots of small things as well. We've done the remote session recording was actually added with Update 2 already, but very limited in its way. We've enhanced that. And we had lots of additional small things, so we'll get to that at the end of the session. Obviously, as every new release, we also will be current on platforms that we support. So things like Windows updates, ZENworks, the platform updates, but also underlying technology that we have is typically updated as well. And we, the last thing, Android API support, I'll get to that. I've actually got some slides on that. So underlying framework is all updated and so on. Yeah. If you've got questions during the session, please let me know. Just put them in the questions window. We've got some people answering questions on that. So please feel free to answer to put your questions out in the chat panel, in the questions panel. Then my colleagues will try to answer that. Okay. First item on the list that I had with the major updates that we have in update 3 is the use of the on-demand content for other things than just the antivirus, anti-malware component. In update 2, so the previous update that we shipped, we introduced anti-malware. And with anti-malware, you saw that we had a different need of what we do with content. Traditionally, we always had the content management system where you got your content repository that holds all content that needs to be distributed to the devices. This content could be, it's zipped files typically. So it's zipped files that are encrypted. They are on the content repository and they'll be downloaded by the workstation to install an application whatsoever. Yeah, that's all linked to objects that we've got in the ZENworks database. That's the static thing. So a bundle is something you create, it's static, and you will distribute that to your environment. With anti-malware, you would have update files that could change multiple times a day. So it's much more dynamic process to get these updates into the system. So we've created what is called the on-demand content system, where the workstation would request, hey, do you have an update for me? Do you have a new version of the signature file? If so, the server would download that and would provide it. If not, the server would actually try to get the latest version from the internet. So that's the way that we've got this. And with that, the on-demand content basically works as a proxy. It's a proxy where you can set timeouts and so on, and how long certain content is allowed to be available and so on. For that content, we were only using that for non-linked content. There's no bundle that is available for the signature file. The signature file that we have for anti-malware is content that we do not link to such an object. So with update 2, there was a separation. You've got the linked content, where we had the traditional content repository, and you had the non-linked content where you could use this on-demand streaming option. With the update 3, we're changing that a little bit. So we're changing the content repository will still remain, but you'll be able to use the same on-demand content system also for additional applications. So you could actually use the same for bundles or for policies. With that change, we're also gonna use the on-demand content for patches, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So if we're looking at the change that we've made, so we've got this on-demand system, and you had the traditional content repo, and with the traditional content repo, we had something like that's called replication, and we're now calling that pre-caching. So you can pre-cache content, and you can synchronize that to all the different satellites, or you can use the on-demand streaming system that will just download things as they are needed. The way it looks like on your workstation, you would request a bundle. So if you install a bundle, it will try to find the content on your local satellite. So the local satellite will look in, is it available through the on-demand content? Is it available through the traditional content repository? If not, it will just ask the upstream server. If it's not available in that one either, it will ask the upstream server again to get the content that is available from the server. Obviously, then it will be provided back to the workstation through the same system, and at that time the bundle is able to be installed. With this on-demand content, there's a lot of management that you can do around it. So you can specify what content is available as pre-cached. So that's basically the old traditional content repository, or if you're using the on-demand system. If you're using the on-demand system, you can set timeouts as well and how long things are available and so on. By default, if you upgrade from 2020 update 2 to 2020 update 3, everything will remain to work as is. So it will use the defaults that you're used to in the past. It's just that we've got this additional capability that you can add. And it could be useful to do this. You can actually do that on a bundle specifically. That was on the previous slide. So on every bundle or on a folder of bundles, you can also specify what the distribution mechanism needs to be. So if you've got specific applications that are not needed on most of the devices and well, if it's needed, it will be fine to download it as is. You can specify that for those applications, we are not pre-distributing that to all the satellites, but it will actually be requested on demand. Yeah, so that will prevent you from distributing everything without having control of it. You can specify for certain things will be needed on all the different locations, but other things we can do that as needed. Obviously, you can schedule the things that have not changed is that you can schedule the synchronization of pre-cached content. That's basically your replication of the content repository. That doesn't change. So you can still pre-cache that to all your satellites. You can specify what satellites need to be getting the content by default and so on. So that's the things that we still got available. For the on-demand content, so you can specify that as well, what we need to do with that. So how long do you need to cache these files on the satellite devices? So if you've got on-demand content, it will be downloaded on demand. It will then stay on that server until a certain timeout is reached. Then we will actually delete the content. So this also means that the amount of storage that you use on the satellite servers will be a lot less because we are cleaning out old stuff, more efficiently. One of the systems that will use this new patch management is actually the new this new content system is the patch management. Patch management will use the on-demand content to distribute patches, but also to distribute the scan file to see what applicable updates we have. So this new patch management system is actually a completely new feed that we have into the ZENworks environment. Now, this new feed has a larger amount of products supported, a larger amount of vendors supported as well. So there's an enhancement on the amount of products that we're able to support. As mentioned, we're moving to this on-demand streaming. One of the reasons why we're doing that is that actually so if you look at the old system, it would synchronize your DAU once a day. Once a day, it would get what is needed, what patches are available. If a patch is added during the day, you would actually need to manually resync. And now you can actually specify that multiple times a day. It will check to see if the file that we have to scan content is still the latest one. If there's a newer version available in the database that we have, it will actually download the newer version so that that data will be added to the scan that you're doing at that point. With the change, we actually moved the patch management features to the microservice architecture. As you probably know, with the update 2, we introduced Docker, and Docker will allow us to make the ZENworks primary server more modular. It will make it easy to update different components on the server. And slowly we are moving different items to this Docker-based architecture. And with the change, the new patch management feed will actually be using this same Docker architecture as well. So a lot of benefits. Faster patch scanning. One of the reasons why we're scanning faster is the more enhanced scanning engine. The additional thing that we do is we are not scanning for software installers by default. So by default, we're just looking for recommended and critical patches, but not for software installers. That will reduce the time a little bit as well. So it's a combination of more advanced scanning technology to minimize the impact, but also reducing the software installers, because typically what we've seen is that users are not using that too much. If you want, you can still add that with you need to change an INI file for that. We have a bigger patch catalog with additional products and so on. Well, we're using the on-demand system. There's a lot of changes. One big change, and that's not mentioned yet, is that we are actually not creating the patches as a bundle anymore. In the old patch management systems, you always had a ZPM folder. We still have the ZPM folder, but within the ZPM folder, we're not going to create patches for we're not going to create bundles for every patch anymore. And that will reduce the amount of load that we produce on the database. The same is for the patches that we got as in the database itself. Yeah, by default, now the patch will only be visible if the device has detected that this patch is needed, and then it will be fed up to the database, and then you will see that when you're creating your patch policies, for example. So products that we have not recognized will not show up if you create your patch policy in the vendor list. I talked about patch policies. People are used to how patch management was working. That's actually not changing. So the patch and the administrative side of patch management will not change because of this change. So all of the patch policies, for example, that you've created, they will still remain to be available. It is, however, a completely different system. So if you upgrade to update 2, initially you will still use the traditional patch management system. And the traditional patch management system where you've got your bundles in ZCC and so on. As soon as you want to move to the new patch management, you need to go through a migration. The migration is available in your configuration screen, where you can migrate to the new patch management system. If you do migrate, it will remove all the patches that you've got on the system. So it will wipe that on the content repository and so on. It will wipe all the bundles that you've got in your database, and you'll basically have a clean system for patch management available. Quickly, that will rebuild. As soon as you've got this migration done, your agents will start scanning. For this, you actually don't need to have all agents up to update 3. So actually, if you've got agents still out with 2020 update 2 or even before that, the patch scan will be able to work even on those systems. So your patch scan will happen, and it will immediately feed the database again, and you will get the information what is patched and what is not patched. Patch policies will adopt to that, and actually from that moment on, after you've done your migration, your patch policies will just remain to work as is. They will just need to be rebuilt, and then they will continue working. And that's how you build your patch management. So you can upgrade to update 3 first, let it work for a while, and as soon as you're moving up to the new patch management feed, you can then start the migration to the new patch management system. I've talked about the fact that we are moving to this new system, this new patch feed that we have. That means that the old patch feed that we have will actually be disappearing at some point. For now, we are keeping that database alive, but eventually that will be cut off. The plan is to cut that off by May 31st in 2024. There is an additional thing, and that's actually the third in this list. So it will remain available, but if you are renewing your system after May 31 this year, you will have to be on the new patch management feed. So if you renew, you can only renew with the new feed. If you've got your renewal going on in May, then you've got some more time to move over and do this migration. But as soon as you migrate after May 30, if you do your renewal after May 31st, you'll need to be on update 3 in order to keep patch management working. So be aware of that. So be ready before you do your renewal. After you've done your migration, patch policies will all remain the same. They'll be just like they were before. CV information and so on, they're empty, but as soon as you're doing the scans in your environment, they will just be built, and within a couple of days, you will have the information back into your database as soon as all the devices have done their scan. A few things have changed. If you go to your dashboard, one of the dashlets that you had was the subscription status. That will actually be deleted. So because the subscription status is not working the same way anymore. We haven't got a sync that will create bundles and so on for patches. Because of the on-demand system, will just download them as they are needed. So it's changing in the way that we work with that. On the diagnostics page, you've got the patch service as a separate item where you can monitor that. And we've got some additional configuration in your configuration screen. one of the things that you can do, I've mentioned that we've got this on-demand content, so you don't want to install a patch or roll out a patch, and then you still need to download it from the internet. So maybe you've got a slow link going out. So you can actually prefetch those settings. So that's available in your ZCC screen. You can prefetch. By default, we do it manually. And so on a patch, you can say, well, I would like to pre-cache this. I would recommend to enable the patch policy rebuild. So that means that if you do a patch policy rebuild, it will check to see what patches are available within the policy, and it will pre-cache those devices on the primary server. Yeah, you can send them out to the satellites as well. On the pre-cache, that's where you will find the languages window that you saw before as well, where you can specify for what languages you would like to pre-cache your content. On the zone settings, you've also got the ability to distribute these pre-cached these pre-cached policies and patches to satellites as well. So that's where you can enable, and you can specify to what servers it needs to be pushed out. Yeah. So that's something that we can configure there. Summary of what we can do with patch management, and as mentioned, Bob and Darren will do a deep dive on that with some more demo in the next session that we have. It's much more flexible in the way that we do the discovery of patches. That's the biggest enhancement that we have. And for the rest, I'll leave it to Bob and Darren for next week, or for next month. With the change of patch management, I've mentioned that we have moved patch management to the new Docker-based architecture. We also done that for imaging and Postgres. Yeah, that's if you're running ZENworks on an appliance. If you're running ZENworks on Windows, you will not use Docker. Then it's just a standard install that we have. But if you're running on a Docker environment, we will actually move that to containers. If you look at the way that we use Docker, we've enhanced some things. We're now using so-called volumes that will make the usage of Docker some more efficient, and we can also more easily separate data that is working for these environments. So that's the change that we've done within that. There's some additional changes that we've done on how to organize the primary server and how to organize the updates that we have. We've introduced something called ZUP. ZUP is a new way to distribute content to servers or to workstations. So ZUP will actually replace the fact that we've got different binaries for different platforms in the content repository and on the ISO. You'll now have a ZUP file that will contain everything. So if you got a ZUP file for the registration process, yeah, we used to have an MSI and we used to have an RPM for that. Now you just got one ZUP file that we combine both of them. And underneath, it will use Zupper to get the install for that done. And a lot of this is happening during the install automatically, so you'll not get into this too much probably. One thing that you do get into is Zocker. Zocker is a new way, and this is actually something that we've introduced with Update 2. And after Update 2, we did quite some additional enhancements on Zocker later on. So initially we did the Zocker patch, and now we do use Zocker FTF to put patches out. We've got patches out on the SLD portal. There you will find the FTF files that have the latest updates for different updates. One thing to be aware of is that sometimes we have, and that's what we currently have with the latest patch that we have for Update 3, we have an issue with the FTF. We saw that customers that had developer FTFs previously were having issues with installing this FTF. So because of that, we've put this warning out. So if there's a warning out, typically I would recommend not to install it. Well, normally the FTFs are recommended to install. If it's not, if it has a warning, just wait, and we will actually release a new patch very soon to replace the one that we currently have out. If you do apply these FTFs, you can use this new Zocker command. So in the description on how to apply such a patch, you will find the instruction that will use this Zocker tool. And Zocker will back up the existing files that you have on your server and will then push out the new files to it. So that's the automatic way of installing patches. It means that we can also roll back patches later on as well. And that's the benefit of Zocker compared to the old way of doing it, where you manually need to, always in the description you had, well, back up your old files. And yeah, what old files that you had, we now have this versioning system basically built in that will provide you with the Zocker updates. So Zocker is, you can actually see what patches are installed. So if you do a Zocker FTF list, it will show you what patches are installed. If you do have developer FTFs, they will be listed separately, and they will have dev FTF within the name. So it's easily to recognize if you've got developer FTFs available. That's the dev FTF file that you see. As mentioned, doing a backup, but you can also revert revert FTFs. So if you've got something installed and you're not happy with that install, you can do a Zocker FTF revert, and that will remove the last patch that you've installed. Talking about patches, typically these FTFs are cumulative, so they will include everything that we had before that. And this is what we have as a recommended patch to install. It could be that at some point we say, well, this is a patch that people have to install. Yeah, this is going to be a mandatory patch. Or if the FTFs are getting so big, we say, well, we don't want to get all these big patches constantly. So we are going to make this a baseline and then we move on. Yeah, that's what we've seen with update 2. Update 2, we did different FTFs until we got to 998, where we fixed some things for Log4j. That's what we said, well, this is going to be a mandatory patch. So we recommend, this is not something that we just recommend, but this is going to be something that people have to install, period. After that, we've started from scratch again with the FTF. So in order to move on, you would first need to install 998, and then you would install the next FTF that is available. That's going to be the same now for update 3 as well. So with the update 2, we had 998, and then whatever patch came, I think we're now at 1007. If you get the 1007, you can just install that, but you have to get this 998 first. Now with update 3, we now have the first FTF available, but the next one that will come out will actually include everything that we've done before, until we might do a baseline at some point. If we do a baseline, that will obviously be in the description that we have with the FTF. So that will be the guideline on how to get the things installed. I see a lot of questions coming in already. So if you got questions, I see that my colleagues are doing great work on answering those. Anything that we need to mention in the session, or, well, everyone can see, I think most of them will reply to all, so you can see what questions have been asked. Makes me that I move on to the next topic, securing ZENworks. We've done 2 major things in update 3. We are splitting ZCC in 2 different things, or splitting the Tomcat instance, where we are separating ZCC from the administrative task that we do from Tomcat. The additional thing that we have is the advanced authentication option for people logging into ZCC. So let's start with ZCC, the splitting of ZCC. So if you look at your ZENworks server, there's 2 main services running on your server. Now, one is Zen Server and one is Zen Loader. And Zen Server will provide a different functionality. It provides the ability for workstations to connect to the server to see if there's an update, but it's also the same service that will allow you as an administrator to administer ZENworks Control Center and to create bundles and do things like that. What we've done with the update 3 is we separated these services. So we have the Tomcat instance that in the past was doing everything at the same time. We've now got 2 services. One is doing ZCC and the administrative task that we have, and the other the other service is just still working with all the devices to make sure that devices are able to do a refresh and so on. Obviously, if you got two services running on the same server, they will not be able to listen to the same port. So the administrative services, they will move to a different port address, and by default, that would be port 7443. Benefit is that if you've got your primary server connected to the internet, you've got more control on who's allowed to access that port 7443. In the past, we already had some abilities in the modern management area where you could highlight what services were available if you are coming in from certain IP addresses. And now you can just use the traditional firewall to block that. If people come in with a VPN, they'll be able to go to 7443. And otherwise, and obviously, if you want, you can forward port 7443 to the outside as well, so that people will be able to reach to that from the outside. A few additional things that we've done, if you're looking at port changes, in the past, we were still using port 80 to download content from the content repository. Now, at the time that we developed ZENworks 10, that's 12, 13 years ago. At that time, it was taking quite some resources to do all the HTTPS traffic. Well, all the content that we have on the content repository is already encrypted as a encrypted zip. So we said, well, that data can be downloaded through port 80. Nowadays, if we get external companies coming in for their security scan, they will recognize, hey, there's a server that has port 80 open. That's a security risk. So nowadays, HTTPS traffic is not an issue anymore. So we now default to HTTPS, and we've blocked port 80 to download the content. So moving on, we'll just use the port 443. We've enabled HSTS on the primary server by default, and we've blocked an additional port on the appliance. So on the appliance, we had the firewall on the appliance had ports 7628 open. That was actually used just by the server itself, so there was no need to have that open to the outside. So by reviewing what ports we were using, we just identified that that needs to be blocked. As we are separating this port, separating the administrative interface, there's something additional that we need to do when we do the update to update 3. If you go through the update 3 update process, that's just a system update, so you can just download that from SLD, or you can use the automatic download into your ZENworks environment. As soon as it's into your system, it will be waiting for authorization. As soon as you've authorized it, there's an additional step. It will show that it's awaiting configuration, and you can then configure this update. And if you do that, it will actually open up a separate page. It will open a page where it says, well, you need to configure this, and the only thing you have to configure is the port address that ZENworks Control Center will use moving forward. Now, by default, we are using 7443. If you prefer to have something different, that's up to you, but you can modify this port if you want to. As soon as that's configured, that screen will show from all your update configuration is configured properly, and then you can just move on with the deployment of your system update as you were used to before. So that's the system update process. That will then, you can assign that to the primary servers that you have in your environment, where you will have this status update screen on the 7444 port. That's the pop-up window that you always get from how you can monitor the update. So that's just working as it was before. As soon as you've updated to update 3 and you use your normal standard bookmark that you've got to access your ZENworks Control Center, ZCC is moved. So we will show you this screen from, well, this is an invalid port number. Your administrative interface has moved. So we will redirect you to, by default, port 7443. But if you change that, obviously, to the port that you've specified yourself. In your ZENworks Control Center, if you go to your diagnostics, you will see the same change as well. So on the diagnostics page, you will find that there's a separate client management module and a separate administrative management module. These are two services that run separately, and they now have their own log files as well. So both services have their own log file to work with. So what used to be the server messages log is now split into two as well. So what do we do with ZENworks setup page? Well, the ZENworks setup page is still available through the normal ZENworks setup. There's a slight difference though. Now it will only show you the agents that are available and will not show you the download of tools anymore. Yeah. On the download page, you always had the ability to get to the helpers of this page. So that's the they are actually available now through the admin interface. So the ZENworks agent is out on the ZENworks setup page still, so you can download the agents from there. The tool downloads is actually hidden in ZCC, and let me quickly switch to my console. Then I do a little bit of demo in this site. So if you go to your home page, there's actually within your common task, there's this download ZENworks tools where you can go to the tools. So if people that want to distribute the ZC helper to admin PCs up front, you can still download the MSI here, manually install that on your devices. Yeah, you can always use the automatic download as well. But here you've got the imaging tools as well, and also you've got the ZENworks agent here. On the ZENworks agent, we did make a change. So one of the things that was quite annoying on the ZENworks agent is that if you go to the agent and install that, you might have an antivirus system on your machine that says, well, hey, this is not a trusted installer. That's because the application is not signed. If you've got applications that you push out, these applications typically are signed by the vendor, and then the antivirus products will actually recognize that as a trusted product, and they will approve that install. With ZENworks, the agent installer actually includes the configuration for the installation. There's a little configuration file embedded within the executable, and the executable is created on your primary server. With that, it's not able to sign this application as such. So with the update 3, we moved to a different system where we do have a signed agent, but a signed agent is pre-created by Micro Focus already. So it does not have the configuration files anymore. So if you now do the network installer or the web installer, it will actually get you a file that is the default installer, but it will give you a separate configuration file, and the separate configuration file will still allow you to do an automatic install. But by separating the configuration file and the installer, that's the way that we can give you a signed application now to do the install from. So that's the agent that we have. So let me go back to my slides. Here I was talking about the new signed package that we have for the agent. One requirement for the agent is that we do require .NET 4.8 on the machine. So if .NET 4 and .NET 4.8 is not installed, it will actually refuse to do the login, to do the upgrade. So that's the requirement that we have for the agent moving forward. Continuing with the security updates that we have, as mentioned, we've added multi-factor authentication, and for that we are using the advanced authentication framework that we have within Micro Focus, so the NetIQ Advanced Authentication. With ZENworks, you will get the bundle edition or the limited edition of NetIQ Advanced Authentication, and that has a limited number of methods. With the multi-factor authentication, you've got different methods. So you've got a token, for example, or an SMS that you get, or through email. So there's a limited number of methods. If you want to have other methods than the ones that we provide, you can always upgrade to the full version of the advanced authentication. But we do provide the limited edition as an entitlement with ZENworks. So there's no additional cost if you want to use that limited version. That does provide full multi-factor authentication capabilities. The only limit that you have is the amount of methods that we provide by default. So multi-factor authentication is available through for ZENworks Control Center. It's not available through ZMan. So if you do ZMan stuff, you obviously still need to log into the server itself first before you can do things with ZMan. But we are mainly concerned about protecting your web interface, especially if you're exposing that to the outside world. So that's what we focused on with the integration of advanced authentication. What you need to do if you want to enable this, you need to create a new event on the Advanced Authentication server. If you do that, you will get what is called a client ID and a secret. That's the stuff that you then need to import into ZCC. So in ZCC, there's below your user sources, you will have an additional field where you can do the advanced authentication. That's where you need to configure this advanced authentication server with the event ID, the client of the client ID and the secret. From then you can specify for what domains, so for what user sources this is valid. So that's the one thing to note is that the default administrator account cannot be enabled through two-factor authentication. So just use your AD or eDirectory users. That's where you can link the multi-factor authentication to. You can configure that, and as soon as you've done that, you can specify per user, or you can do that on the zone level that multi-factor authentication is needed. If you want, you can disable it for some specific users, but obviously if you enable this, then you would like to get all the users to use that. If they then log in, they will get an additional prompt with an additional window where the multi-factor component is asked. So if you have an SMS OTP, for example, you get an SMS on the phone that is known to the system, and you will then allow, if you put that in, you will just log into ZCC as normal. Yeah. So that's the way that we can do things. Some additional security changes. I've had these already, so I've got these twice. Apologies. Moving on to additional things that we have on the update 3. Remote session recording. We actually did this with update 2. And we introduced the ability to record sessions with update 2, but there was no management at all around that. So the only thing it would do is record the session on the managed device, but you were not able to manage that. So now we are able to record sessions and then collect the recordings as well to the ZCC environment. In your remote management policy, you now have an additional checkbox to say allow recording of remote management sessions. If you do that, you'll get an additional icon enabled in your remote management screen that will allow you to start the recording. Now, one of the requests I already had from a few customers is, can we automatically enable recording? So that's something that we have on our wish list for the next version. For now, you need to manually start the recording if you want to. As soon as you do the recording, you will get this recording progress on the managed device. So it will show you when it's actually recording on the device itself. Yeah, that's combined with the little notification icon that you always have if you do remote management. What's changed, what's new in this update 3 is that we collect the file. So as soon as we do the recording is actually an event that can be monitored with the audit. So in your audit management, in your audit screen, the recordings will show up, and you can actually view the recordings from there. Cleanup of the recording is easy because it will just use whatever you have configured with the action that you have in audit. So that's when you delete that. Within remote management, we also have a chat capability now. So I've just shown you the little ZENworks screen that you have on your managed device. There's a chat option as well in that, and that's what you have in your management console as well. So from the chat, you can enable a text window. Text window is where it is. Here we've got the text window. So you can use that to have a chat. The nice thing about chat is that this will be logged as well. So you can actually get the information later on. So it actually will show up in your audit screen as well that you had a chat window. All the chat information is logged onto your local workstation. So on the workstation, you've got the log that will give you that info. What do we have additional? Well, as mentioned here, you've got this little icon that you see here on the remote management. That's where you can enable the chat option. It's a resizable thing, obviously. We do, well, multi-language supports. If looks at the language that you've got on your local workstation and tries to default to what you've got on that machine. There's a maximum size on 1024 characters per message. Typically, that's not too much of an issue in a chat. As mentioned, the log files are being stored locally. So on the local device, you've got a chat log. If you do multiple sessions to a single device, within your chat window, you will only see those chat messages they have for that session. In the log, they will actually be combined per device. So you will see different chat logs in the log combined. And that's the same what is put out here. So you can actually configure that. So you can specify how large these log files need to be. You can configure that in your registry if you want to. Yeah, the default is 100 and 100K. As mentioned, in audit we've got the chat log as well, so it will tell you that there's been a chat session to a specific user, so that's added as an audit event, so you can enable that with your audit events in your configuration screen. One last thing that we've done with the remote management is an ability to reconnect after you've done a reboot. This depends a bit on how you've configured your remote management policies. But if you connect it to a machine, you're working remote on a machine and you need to do some additional work afterwards, you can reboot a machine and it will just wait until that machine comes back online again, and it will just restart the session that you had. This obviously depends on how you've got your configuration done. So first of all, you can configure that within your remote management policy. So that's in your remote management configuration, you can enable this reconnect if you want. You can actually specify the timeout for that. So by default, we will wait for 10 minutes, but you can extend that to 60 if you want to. So that's an option that you can enable. This will only work if you've got your device if you can remote control to the device. If you are remote controlling to the user, so if the policy is set to the user, then after the reboot, the user is not logged in yet, and then you'll not be able to do remote session. If you do file transfers, things like that, then obviously this is not working. So this is not working if you it's working if you do a normal remote view or a remote management session. I'm struggling for my words, apologies. And it's not working if you do a joint proxy connection. That's an important thing to know as well. That concludes my remote management piece. We've got quite a few additional small things that we've done. So one thing that we've added is the MSIX support. So typically people work with MSI files, but now we've got MSIX as well. So it's a new format that we have from Microsoft. So we've got bundles that are able to distribute that. Some major changes that we've done on Android, and this is an important one. So if we have customers using Android currently, using ZENworks to manage Android devices, make sure that you upgrade to update 3 or update 2 with all the post-update 2 patches on it, because the Google actually changes some things on the way that you're managing Android. If you're not upgrading to update 2 or with the latest patches or update 3, you will not be able to add additional applications anymore to your device, and eventually you'll not be able to manage your devices properly anymore. So this is something that Google changes in their system. Google then just demands all the vendors that do Android management to adopt the changes that they've made, but they will now depreciate the old APIs that they have. And this is what you then get if you got your Android Enterprise stuff. A lot of additional small things that we've done. Small things, one of the things I like is the ability to pin certain items in your frequently used. So if you got specific things that you like to work with and want to get quick access to, by the time that you need that, then it's suddenly gone from your frequently used again because you've been browsing around. You can actually now pin certain things so that you can always directly go to those objects if you want to. So that's a nice feature that we've added to it. As a feature that I like really much, I do a lot of demos, and then during the demo, I have my ZCC screen open in the background, I can now extend the timeout easily from within my configuration screen. Yeah, so you can set the default as 30 minutes, but if you want, you can set it to 2 hours or so, and then by the time the 2 hours, then you will have the timeout. So that's the change that we've done on the timeout. Talking ZCC, another thing that you can do is see what users actually have ZCC sessions to the same server. So you can monitor, see what administrators are logged into the same machine, and yeah, if they've got connections, if you want to restart the primary server, for example, you can see what colleagues are actually out on the server doing administrative work. An additional thing that we've done on ZCC in the device details. So if you look at the details of a specific device, we've added some additional fields. This is something that came out of the ideas portal as well. One of the things that we've done is last boot time. We also have the reboot pending. Yeah. Earlier in the session, we've talked about patch management, and patch management is only useful if you also do a reboot eventually. We can suppress reboot. That means the device will not reboot. But if the end user would just put their machine to sleep and never reboots, eventually, the patch is still not installed. So it becomes effective after the reboot. So now we've got a better way to monitor that to when the last reboot happened. In the past, you needed to do some specific tricks to get that information, but now we just have that by default into the management screen. What we also added is the last network location. Yeah, that's something that you could easily get with the scan with the data collection form, but now you can easily get that from the. We actually collect that by default now as well. So that's the things that we've added, and we actually added that in the search capabilities as well. So you can create search options to search for all the devices that have not been rebooted for a long time, for example. Talking search, in the search options, we also have the ability now to search for bundles that you've got disabled. So a bundle, you can disable those if you want. Some people are using that frequently, but it's sometimes difficult to identify what bundles have been disabled so far. Maybe if you want to do some cleanup in your list of bundles. So this is now an option that you have within the search where you can easily find all the bundles that have been disabled. So that's the bundle search. And in the bundles, you can now just see additional details as well on who's created the bundle, who's been modifying things, and when the last modify date was. Yeah, so you can see when the different versions have been created and so on. Yeah, and who did that. An additional thing in system requirements, this is just one of those annoying things where you've got a little text field that is too small. Now we actually are using a wider screen, so you're able to read the full name of what is out there. In the past, these windows were so small that sometimes you needed to scroll through in order to see what field it was. That's now fixed as well. So this was one of the things that was a long waiting requirement of a long waiting request on the request portal. So we've put that in. Dynamic groups based on last contact, so that's one thing that we've added as well, and search based on the GUID. So if you've got log files and you see a certain GUID doing weird things and you wonder, hey, what device is that? You can easily search for that device with the ability to search for the GUID. So that's the option that we have. With that, I'm at the end of my presentation. So I've seen a lot of questions coming through the questions and answers. Is there anything, Bob, that we want to highlight specifically?
No, there hasn't been really any common theme. Lots of different questions as you've gone through the topic. So nothing just yet.
That's good. Well, if questions come in, if you've got questions, feel free to quickly type them at last. I just want to highlight that next month we will be doing a more in-depth focus on patch management. Bob and Darren will mainly drive that session. So there will be a focus on how the on-demand content system is working, what configuration you can do, what you can do with troubleshooting, patch management, and so on. How to do the migration from the old feed to the new feed. So as mentioned, you can upgrade to update 3 without changing patch management. And then later on, you can do the migration. And from that migration moment on, you will actually start to use the new patch management feed. So Bob and Darren will focus on that. In the session that we have in March, we are planning to do some sneak peeks on what development is working on. We're looking at the integration of Azure and the management of Mac OS, but more details about that will be, in next month. We will have more details on that, on what we plan for March. If you got suggestions of what things we should focus on in these sessions, feel free to send an email and we will focus on that. For now, last thing I have to do is thank you for your attendance. I hope it was useful, and I hope to see you the next month to have the slides again. The session is recorded, so the people that have not attended, or if you are not able to attend the one that we've got next month, I'll be posting those on the community blog. So I'll create a post there with links to the recording, so you can always look back at what the recording has been. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next month.